Listeners who didn't wish to hear about such things should turn off their radios.
Last year, I made a series of 6 predictions about big tech and AI. And now, with the calendar year mercifully behind us, it's time to face the proverbial music. Spoiler alert, it was a mixed bag, which, honestly, is a fancy way of saying I was half right and half wrong. Kind of like when you order salad, but you douse it in dressing. Kind of healthy, right? For me, though, predictions aren't about being right necessarily, or trying to prove just how much you know. Instead, they're simply an exercise in stepping back and taking stock of the bigger picture, trends, patterns, possibilities. Regardless of my batting average, the process itself is always illuminating. Okay, so how'd I do? Well, like everything in life, it seems, I followed something of a bell curve. Some I nailed, others I missed entirely, but most were kind of in that murky middle, kind of right, but not entirely. So let's start with the ones that I actually managed to get right, because who doesn't love a little bit of self-congratulations? First, I predicted that Apple would launch an AI phone, and I think I nailed this. Back in June at their Worldwide Developers Conference, Apple unveiled Apple Intelligence, which is a suite of AI-driven features that are designed specifically for the iPhone, iPad, and Mac. And by the way, leave it to Apple, masters of all things branding, to even develop a proprietary name for AI. You gotta love it. Anyway, the key point here is that Apple has designed many of its capabilities to function directly on the device. This approach is often referred to as edge computing. It's when things happen on a device instead of in the cloud. In last year's video, I highlighted what I believe is Apple's most significant competitive advantage. It's not just their vertical integration, their massive user base, or even their treasure trove of data, but rather, it's their unwavering commitment to privacy. Whereas most tech companies are built on extracting every single ounce of data they can from their users, Apple really does stand apart here. They've chosen not to collect data unnecessarily. And with over 1 billion iPhone users globally, much of this data still remains on the device, this sort of edge approach, untouched, unseen, and unmonetized by Apple. This approach has admittedly made some of their products, well, a little meh. Siri, for example, is still about as useful as a 90s Tamagotchi. But this privacy-first strategy has also earned them unparalleled trust, from health metrics and personal journals to messages, photos, and midnight musings. Hundreds of millions of people are happily, willfully sharing everything with Apple. They're confident that it's not going to end up on some creepy ad platform. Apple kept its seamless approach to hardware and software last year with the iPhone 16, which introduced a powerful new chip that was designed specifically for AI. Now, all of these Apple Intelligence features can run faster and smoother right on the device. This focus on keeping things local on the device, rather than relying on the cloud, it continues to set them apart. On top of that, their recent partnership with OpenAI to boost Siri, thank God, as well as a new collaboration with Broadcom to create these server-side custom AI chips, they show that Apple's plans for AI are starting to come into focus. Anyway, I definitely got this one right. Next, I predicted that a news company would launch a verification AI this year. And in January, Fox News rolled out Verify, a blockchain-based platform to authenticate digital content for AI. Yes, Fox News is using the blockchain to verify the truth. We're just gonna let that sink in for a minute. Cool. There were a few other deals and products that launched this year as well, from McAfee collaborating with Yahoo to detect deepfakes in journalistic content, and News Corp's partnership with OpenAI, which I specifically predicted last year. So sure, I think I got this one right also. That said, I think it also might be kind of irrelevant. From universities to, yes, news organizations, our institutions seem to be crumbling across the board. Recent partnerships between AI companies and these news companies, they remind me of the deals that record labels struck with Apple and iTunes back in the early 2000s. Back then, piracy through Napster and others had turned the music industry on its head. Apple offered an elegant solution: make buying songs easier than stealing them. But that convenience, it came at a cost. The record labels were absolutely no longer in control. iTunes dictated the terms, and the industry had to bend to its will. Similarly, these partnerships between news organizations and AI companies are fundamentally asymmetric. Sure, news outlets gain some authentication tools and modest licensing revenue for their content, but the AI companies get something that's far more valuable: training data. That data fuels models that could eventually replace the very institutions providing it. As Mark Andreessen famously said in the early 2000s, software is eating the world. Today, that's even more true. AI is, of course, eating software, but also everything else along the way, including, oh yeah, journalism. The friction here isn't subtle. Case in point, the ongoing billion-dollar-plus copyright battle between the New York Times and OpenAI. Now, I'm no legal expert. My courtroom expertise extends exclusively to Judge Judy reruns.
Your beloved cats are going to disappear. I'm telling you. And that will be your fault.
But honestly, the outcome of this case might not even matter in the grand scheme of things. Journalism, at least as we know it, is in freefall. Trust in media organizations is at rock bottom, and AI-generated gray content is flooding the information landscape. Rather than confronting these existential challenges, many news organizations seem to be fighting the wrong war. Regardless, I think I got this one right as well. Moving on. I also made a prediction that AI would lead to an international political incident. Now, I've been making this prediction for 7 years running, and I can assure you when I first made it, it was a little bit more provocative than it probably seems today. Regardless, thankfully, I've been wrong every single time, until now. Unfortunately, like a broken clock that's right twice a day, I think I finally got this one right. Let's kick things off with Russia, because of course we're starting with Russia. They've been using AI-generated disinformation campaigns to build support for their attacks internally on Ukraine. In past predictions, I specifically mentioned that countries with state-run media, like Russia, like North Korea, that they're prime candidates for weaponizing AI-generated content to shape narratives that lend credibility to their various agendas. This prediction seems to be aging like fine wine. We also witnessed AI-generated misinformation influencing the elections in Slovakia this year. Just days before their election, deepfake audio recordings surfaced, allegedly featuring conversations between a journalist and a prominent liberal politician discussing vote rigging and other controversial topics. These fake recordings, widely circulated on social media, likely swayed the outcome in favor of a pro-Russian populist party. This incident aligns precisely with what I've been fearing, that AI is going to be used to manipulate various political processes. And finally, coming closer to home, the U.S. also saw the beginnings of this phenomenon. In September, Senator Ben Cardin, who's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he was targeted by a deepfake during a Zoom call. An impersonator used AI to mimic Ukraine's former foreign minister, asking politically charged questions. Now, to his credit, Senator Cardin quickly terminated the call and he reported it to the State Department. But this incident, it highlights how sophisticated and dangerous politically motivated deepfakes have become. But here's the real concern. These are just the incidents that we know about. While I don't see myself as a conspiracy theorist, despite how stunning I'd no doubt look in a tinfoil fedora, I suspect there's more happening that's just going on under the radar. I personally come across AI-generated political content on social. It wasn't flagged, it was garnering significant engagement and all this stuff. And who knows how many deepfake calls, texts, or other forms of manipulation have gone undetected. There's simply no way to measure the full scope of the problem. The bottom line is this. We're now firmly in an era where everything has to be questioned. Trust but verify, even that's not enough anymore. It's verify again, then, I don't know, just pour some vodka. It's probably all fake anyway. Kidding. So yeah, unfortunately, this prediction I got right, and it's a reality that we're going to be dealing with in the coming years. Now, onto the predictions that landed kind of in the middle, partly right and partly wrong. Last year, I predicted that OpenAI would launch a physical device. My reasoning was based on the well-known issue within the world of AI, that companies are running out of training data. Yes, that's right, the machines, they're hungry. We're fresh out of snacks. Hardware, whether consumer-facing products like phones and wearables, or industrial devices like warehouse robots or drones, they present significant opportunities because they generate massive amounts of valuable data. When it comes to data, hardware is truly a goldmine. To date, OpenAI hasn't released any hardware, so it's a miss on my part. That said, I still think I was pretty close on this one. For starters, it was reported that OpenAI is collaborating with Johnny Ive, the former chief design officer at Apple, to develop their own hardware device. In the Times article, I've mentioned that they're aiming to create a device that offers a, quote, computing experience that's less socially disruptive than the iPhone. Less socially disruptive. That's a pretty low bar. Anyway, while the specifics are vague, the fact that Johnny Ive and OpenAI are in cahoots clearly points to something brewing. Additionally, in October, OpenAI launched a consumer hardware division that's led by a former Meta AR executive. This move, it signals their intent to explore hardware, rather through integrations or fully owned devices. While I didn't get this one entirely right, the trajectory is super clear. OpenAI is increasingly moving towards hardware. Might take longer than I anticipated, but the shift is undeniably underway. Another prediction that I got wrong, but kind of right, was my prediction that there would be a consolidation among 2 or more of the leading AI companies. As I outlined in last year's video, the race to develop foundational AI models, it's kind of like the 100-yard dash. You know, if the competitors were billion-dollar companies and the finish line was total global domination. The belief is that whoever wins this race will essentially become the rails for every product going forward. Of the 7 companies I highlighted, none merged, so I gotta take the L on this one. However, like my hardware prediction, there's still a bit more to unpack here. For one, back in March, Microsoft acquired a significant stake in Infection AI by investing $650 million and taking on some of their team, including their executives. Though, yes, it's true, OpenAI didn't acquire Infection as I had predicted. Microsoft essentially owns OpenAI. So yeah, this prediction technically missed the mark, but how wrong it feels really depends on how you interpret antitrust laws. Consolidation is happening, just in a less direct way than I had envisioned. And then there's the one that I got completely wrong. I predicted that synthetic data would be regulated this year. For context, synthetic data refers to data that's generated through computer simulations rather than being collected from real-world events. I firmly believe that synthetic data is the future, especially given the increasing scarcity of high-quality data that's captured from the real world, as well as all these copyright challenges. Last year, I pointed out that Gartner had predicted that the majority of AI training data would be synthetic by the end of last year. And based on my research, that prediction seems to be off the mark. However, Gartner has since doubled down on the importance of synthetic data. This year, they forecast that by 2026, 75% of businesses will use generative AI to create synthetic customer data. That's up from less than 5% in 2023. I couldn't agree more with Gartner's belief that synthetic data is going to play a critical role in the future of AI. My prediction, though, went even further. Too far, clearly, as I got it wrong. I had suggested that not only would synthetic data be really relevant, but that it would also face regulation this year, particularly in heavily regulated sectors like finance and healthcare. Unfortunately, not only was no regulation passed, but I struggled to even find a significant discussion about it. I think this lack of regulation and conversation in general stems from a broader societal misunderstanding of AI. Frankly, I've never loved the term AI anyway. It's an umbrella term. It was coined way back in the 50s by John McCarthy at Dartmouth University, and it's encompassed a vast array of flavors and applications over the last 75 years. ChatGPT, for instance, is just one application of AI. It's not AI as a whole. This oversimplification creates challenges. When everything gets lumped together as simply AI, it becomes harder to understand specific developments like, oh yeah, synthetic data, and what should or shouldn't be done about it. While there's plenty of demands for data transparency, synthetic data kind of operates a step removed. It's embedded deep in the machine. I suspect this confusion is why fewer companies are developing clear strategies for employing synthetic data in the first place. It's also likely why Gartner's earlier prediction missed the mark and why regulation is, of course, still absent, making my own prediction a total fail. Still, a swing and a miss on my part, no question about it.
And that will be your fault.
So, there you have it. The results from last year's Predict-O-Rama. If you have any thoughts or disagreements, please feel free to share them in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to hit subscribe for more thoughts on design, technology, and innovation. It's going to be a real hoot. Happy New Year.